In this episode, I get to speak with Bo Royal, a marketing maestro who has made a remarkable shift from the high paced world of Fortune 500 advertising to revolutionizing marketing in the legal sector. With a background that includes leadership roles at eBay's Marketing Solutions division and boosting the online presence of iconic brands like Calvin Klein, Bo has spent the last 5 years dedicating to optimizing law firms' marketing strategies. Join us as Bo shares his expert insights on how law firms can maximize their reach, attract more clients, and thrive in today's competitive landscape. Listen in for more. Hey everybody, welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. I'm your girl Etta, and today I have the amazing Bo Royal, which we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics because that is legitimately what we do at Etta Rosa LLC, and of course the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. We talk about optimization and we talk about all the good things that you can do in order to optimize yourself, your business, and everything around you. So without further ado, Bo, can you please introduce yourself to our audience and let them know a little bit about you?
Course, Etta, thank you first off for having me on. It's great to be on the podcast. For the listeners who might not know me, my name is Bo Royal. I am CEO of Paralegal. We are a growth marketing agency that specializes in injury law firms, specifically firms that are looking to grow their practices with digital advertising, conversion rate optimization, and analytics.
I love it. I love the digital advertisement. It's definitely something that a lot of people misconstrued as just social media or just, there's a very, and maybe we can talk about that too through the optimization because maybe people don't understand what that actually means. And me as a business owner, I had to learn that because I was, I was the same way. I was just like, oh, what? So it's a fancy way of saying social media. And
Yep.
no, it's completely different. So how about we like kind of educate our audience and really make them understand what digital marketing is all about and kind of what that entails.
Sure. So I think digital marketing is kind of the blanket statement for all marketing activities that happen online, right? So that
Yeah.
could be broken down into two categories. On one hand, there's the organic side of digital marketing. So that's things like SEO, that's things like posting on your social media profile, that's like writing content on your blog. So that would fit into the organic category. And then on the other hand, there's the paid category or the advertising category, right? And so that's going to encompass things like Google pay per click. That's going to encompass things like local services ads. That's going to encompass things like social media ads, right? So that's like when you say social media ads, the common mistake people will make is like, well, yeah, I'm doing ads on social media, and then we'll look at their social media profiles and no, you're actually just doing the organic side of it. You're just posting to people that already follow you. There's this whole other paid side where you can push your social media content towards people that might be an ideal client for your business, right? So there's this organic and paid side to digital marketing. And I actually kind of hit on some of the main tactics that fall within each category.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about target marketing, right? I believe that's probably the main difference. And please correct me if I'm wrong, because marketing is definitely not my forte. I'm just implementing what I've learned through my marketing team because they like to educate me along the way, which I appreciate very much. So I learned this as well, right? Even though you know your ideal client, what we call the persona or the avatar or whatever the case may be, there is a I want to say strategy, formula that you kind of have to play with, right? It's not like an automatic thing because a lot of people go to marketing agencies. And I know, again, I'm speaking by experience, thinking that they have the magic formula where all my clients are just going to really just influx in and it's just going to be this magical unicorn ride all the way to the rainbow. And it's just going to be amazing. I'm going to be a trillionaire and it's just going to be beautiful, right? So unfortunately, that's not really how marketing works, right? Because even though you may have your persona, you may have your ideal client, and you may have all the things. And by that, I mean, you need to know how they shop, how they think, what they like, what they don't like, where they spend most of their time. Like that takes a lot of time to figure out. And that's pretty much, maybe I'm assuming, is kind of what you guys do as well. Or
Yes.
am I wrong there?
No, yeah, we have to help our clients figure that out because if we don't figure that out, that's a surefire way to burn through their budget, right? And
Yeah.
so going back to what you said, you know, digital advertising is very targeted advertising. It's not like running a billboard or a TV or a radio ad where you're kind of just, you know, hitting the masses, hoping that someone within that populace that you're hitting with the ad is in the need of an attorney, right? This is kind of the inverse of that, where you can be very, very intentional in terms of the demographic that you're trying to go after, you know, the age, the gender, the household income, the parental status, the home ownership status. It's crazy the number of things that you can select and determine when you're setting up that targeting. So that's like a really, really big differentiator. The other thing I would say too with digital advertising is you have because of that additional targeting, you have a lot more control with your budget in the sense that like when you do a TV buy or a radio buy, you're kind of just like signing your money away. It's like, okay, yeah, get me all these eyeballs and get me all these listeners, right? And then you spend all the money and then the campaign's done. With digital, you're kind of gathering this data in real time. So if I say, you know, I want to target, you know, men and women between the ages of 18 to 35 in these 10 zip codes, you can set that campaign up relatively easily. And then after you spend, you know, maybe your first 10 or $20,000, whatever you want to spend, you can pause the campaign and then adjust your strategy based on the data that you've collected, right? So there's so much more flexibility with your budget when you're running it through digital advertising versus these other traditional advertising channels. And that's why we're so bullish on it still. I mean, digital advertising has been around now for over 25 years, like, you know, since the internet really became popular back in the 90s. And we're still not even close to full adoption of these advertising channels, which is kind of crazy to think that there are still companies out there spending all or not all, but a greater proportion of their budgets on traditional advertising when they're kind of sitting on this golden ticket in all of these digital advertising tactics that they could be running, right? So there's still a lot of opportunity to make a dent in the digital advertising world, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm completely in agreement with you, especially and one point that I wanted to point out because I know you kind of brushed over it, but for me as a consultant guru, I love data.
Mhm.
So data gathering, we call it data analysis when we're coming into the law firms and we're gathering all this data, and capturing data is something that law firms tend not to do, which is kind of funny because in essence, that's what you need to be doing, right? Because you're lawyers, especially in the personal injury world where you have to gather very like important information outside of your client's information, like were there cameras, how was the weather, was there a police officer, do we have a witness, you know, and so all this information should be gathering somewhere. And unfortunately, we miss the mark on that, especially when it's a personal injury law firm, maybe what I call young, and I don't mean young of age, I mean young of years, right? How long they've been around and they're just trying to learn the ropes and they're just trying to figure it out at this point. Because as we all know, and this is why I have a job and this is why my company thrives, lawyers did not learn how to run the business portion of law firms.
Right.
They just learned how to lawyer unless they go outside above and beyond and actually learn how to do it or hire us, a consulting firm, to help them out. So understanding that reality, I'm very curious because I have some stories for you too, but I'm very curious to hear kind of because you work with pretty much the same people I work with, personal injury lawyers. Um, what has been your biggest, I guess, setback, right, when it comes to clients, right? Because other than, of course, you have the golden ticket, right? You're going to fix all their issues and they're going to have thousands of clients coming into the door because we all know that that's really a reality, a realistic expectation that anybody has when they go into marketing.
Right. So sorry, can you repeat the question? Like what
Oh, what were
specifically?
your setbacks? Like, what are your, like, I guess, the most tensions when it comes to your clients, right? Like, I can give you some examples for me. Well, why do I need your services? Like, I can run my firm and then you come with them with all these information and all these stats and you know, really run the analysis and show them, well, you know, you're investing too much in this when you're supposed to be investing in here, and these are your numbers and you're not, you know what I mean? And we just kind of run the numbers with them.
Mhm.
So what, I guess, what's your biggest one, I guess, where you're just like, really?
Yeah, I think you already touched on one, which is the data and the tracking. So, I'll talk to law firms and we'll sit down and they'll come to me and say, I want to run an advertising campaign and this is what I'm trying to generate in terms of cases from the campaign, and here's my budget. And so we kind of take that and we pull some data from, the different advertising platforms like Google or Meta, and we basically determine, hey, this is what we think we can generate in terms of impressions and traffic. And then we apply some assumptions on the leads and the cases that we're going to get from that, right? The reason why we run into setbacks when we get to that stage is because we're going to start asking questions to the law firm about, well, talk to us about how, what percentage of the leads you're bringing in the firm right now are qualified, and we'll get some kind of weird looks. And then we'll ask, and by the way, what percentage of the qualified leads that you're generating are you converting into clients? And then we'll
Mhm.
get some other strange looks. And so there's kind of like, I think there's on one hand, there's firms that just simply aren't tracking this stuff, right? And then it's really hard for us to kind of confidently come in and say, hey, if you give us X, you're going to get Y in terms of cases. But then I think on the flip side, there are firms that are tracking that stuff. But then once they kind of share the numbers, it identifies, oh, okay, so there's some opportunity here to optimize things even beyond your marketing. Like there might be, and this kind of leads to my next roadblock, which is intake.
Yeah.
Intake is a huge opportunity for law firms to optimize. And a common thing that I see and thing that comes up in conversation is firms will come up to me and say, hey, we have a marketing problem. We're getting a bad ROI on Google. We're not getting enough cases from Facebook, Instagram. And I ask like 4 or 5 questions, and I know pretty much immediately they don't have just a marketing problem. Like maybe their concerns are valid, and they probably are, but their real problem is on intake.
Yeah.
They don't have a system in place to track all the leads. They don't have the right team in place that's being coached and monitored and is expected to keep the lead information updated in the lead management tool. Um, they don't have an answering service. They're not able to answer calls after hours. Like the list goes on. So like just by virtue of asking like 4 or 5 questions, I can quickly deduce that, okay, there's more things that need to be fixed other than your Google Ads campaign, right? Or there's more things to be fixed than your website landing page. Like there are things that we can help you tweak on the intake side to get you more bang for your buck. And that's another thing too, like firms should realize if they are 50% more efficient at converting leads into cases, that's like real revenue that's going to stick to your bones, and you didn't have to pay a thing for it. All you had to do was put better people in better seats, get the systems in place. I mean, really it's 3 things. It's people, process, and technology. Those are
Yeah.
the 3 things that you have to focus on to get intake to where it needs to be. So we end up kind of becoming like a de facto fractional intake director sometimes with our clients. And when we're listening to some calls and saying like, hey,
Yeah.
this call wasn't handled well. Do you have someone that can coach this person on that? Like those are conversations that we end up having. So that's how we kind of address that roadblock.
Yeah, I love it. And that's where I come in.
Right.
And it's funny that you say that, about people, processes, and technology. And I'm just like, yeah, like my last one is not really technology, it's automation, but it
Automation.
includes technology.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely, I'm like when you said that, I was like out here cheering. I was like saying out loud for the people in the back because it's like, my thing always is this is amazing that you're going to invest in your law firm and really focus on target marketing with a marketing agency or whomever you're trying to do. However, is your team prepared for the leads that is going to generate, right?
Right.
Because here you are, like you said, and I'm quoting you, you're investing a minimum of $10,000 to $20,000 on top of whatever they're investing in your services, right? So let's do the numbers game here. You're investing a good chunk of your time and money on this, new lead generation. And that's wonderful and that's great. And congratulations and kudos to you for noticing that this is an avenue that you can take. But is your team ready? Is your team
Right.
trained? Are these going to be convertible? Do you have a system in place for these new leads that are going to be in an influx? Do you have enough people? Are the people that are there, are they knowledgeable on how to handle this influx that's going to come in? Because if this is the outcome that you're telling the marketing team that you want, do you have that team to really handle the balls coming in the court, you
Right.
know? So, and that's really my primary thing because they'll always come to me and they're like, well, we have a marketing person. And I was like, well, yeah, but is your team ready for it? Like, if they generate what you're telling them, are they ready for it? Is your intake, do you have an intake person? Do you, like you said, do you have an answering service? Do you have an intake form? Right, where they can just go down the line and just say yes, no, maybe so, especially in personal injury, it's super standardized. Regardless of what state you're in, there are certain standard questions that you can always implement regardless of what state you're in the US. So understanding the consistency and the automation portion of actually really implementing these processes, like you said, and putting the right people in the right places, and the automation technology portion of it, that is essential, right? That is a trifecta of ultimate success. Like, you can go ahead and hire these, what I love what you said in the intake, third-party lead gen services, but what are you doing about it, right?
Right.
How are you optimizing this investment? How are you, you're ready to invest, but do you have everything in place? It's kind of like when you opened up the law firm in the first place. Do you have processes and automation, the correct people? It's the same thing, right? It's the same concept throughout. So regardless of where you're going to invest at the law firm, you really need to come to the realization, what are the true needs? How is this going to be handled once you accomplish the results? Do you have that in place? Are you ready for it? Because then that's going to create what I always have to clean up, right? Which is caseload mismanagement, deadlines, missing deadlines left and right, the what is it? Decline in productivity,
Mm.
missing leads, right? Which is decline in clients. So not getting referrals from your current clients, because personal injury tends to be a one and done kind of deal. Hopefully they don't go through another incident, but it tends to be. And so how do you make those relationships last? Is by referrals, right? Is by
Yes.
is by gaining that consistent relationship where they're like, man, I had this amazing attorney that helped me out at this really need, and their team was just amazing. I understood everything. I didn't have a question. They were just great. You should really call this attorney, right?
Yeah.
Like, the difference it makes when you have a sure process in place. And I love how you were talking about automation and systems, especially in the intake, because that is essential. That, it's what I always call like the nail salon or the barbershop effect. So how do you choose a nail salon? How do you choose a barbershop for all my male people out there, or the women that like to, get to go to the barber? I'm not I'm not discriminating here. But how do you do that? You go to the reviews, you go through how close they are. Okay, great. So you go through all of that, you find somewhere where you think, okay, this could be a good fit. You get in there and you have bad customer service. Are you ever going to go there again? Absolutely not. There's thousands of options out there. What sets you apart is your customer service.
Right. Well, yeah, I'll say I know for me personally, my AC unit broke about 6 months ago,
Mm,
and I'm relatively new to the area that I live in, so I didn't have anyone top of mind that in the past that I could call. So I went to Google search. I ended up calling four different HVAC companies. The first three didn't pick up.
wow.
The first, and they were running ads on Google. And so I went through that first carousel of Google ads, the local services ads, didn't get a pickup from any of them. And I ended up working with the fourth one because they picked up the phone and I was like, here's my problem. I need someone out here today. I want this fixed now. Someone was out there later that day and they got the business. Right. So it's like that's a microcosm for what we're talking about here, in that you have to have the infrastructure in place to be able to handle 10, 20, 50, 100, whatever the number of calls in that are coming every single day. And I'll simplify that question to a prospective client when I'm speaking with them. And I'll just say, if we were to send you 50 more leads tomorrow, would it break your business?
Mm.
And that's not me being kind of cavalier in terms of what we can do. I'm not saying that to kind of inflate our ego. It's a genuine question to make sure that if you're going to make this investment in this,
You better be
you
ready.
better be ready. It's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. Like,
Mhm.
do you really want to do that? Like, let's fix some of these holes in that bucket first before you even think about pouring that water in, right? So yeah, it's just making sure that you consider the operational impact to your firm before you invest in the marketing. The thing I will say though, and this is something else that I'll talk about with clients, is like this all starts with measurement and tracking,
Yeah.
right? So we just talked about all these things that like firms should be doing and things they should be optimizing. I would say square one is begin tracking all of this stuff. I forget who said it. It's a quote I repeat all the time. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it, right?
Mm,
And
I love
so,
it.
you know, going back to what we were saying, like with intake people, like get the right people in the right seats. Well, how do you know who the right people are? How do you know what the right seat is, right? You need to start tracking certain metrics that are important for that department to ensure that you have the right people doing the things that you need to convert the lead into a case, right? So like get that measurement framework in place so that you can look at that data over the course of a month, a quarter, or a year, right? So that's like the intake tracking. I'd say on the marketing side, you need to have Google Analytics installed on your website if you're running digital marketing and advertising campaigns. Frankly, if you just have a website, you need Google Analytics. It doesn't matter whether or not you're doing anything, but that
Yes.
will give you data on where your traffic is coming from a channel perspective. So are they coming to the site through Google, or are they coming through Reddit or a legal directory or something like that, right? Um, and also like who they are. So like demographics, we'll go back to talking about that. Like what zip code are they coming to your website from? What state are they in? What's their age? What's their gender? Like there's so much data you can get from just installing Google Analytics on your website. And the best part is it's free.
It is. I was just gonna say, I'm like, it's at no cost.
No cost to you. So it takes like 10 seconds to get installed on your site, especially for those that are on like WordPress. It's
WordPress.
so easy to get installed. So like take stock on the things that it's kind of like no pun intended. Take an inventory or stock on the things that you're tracking, right? So track what you're tracking and make sure that you're using it's one thing to track things. It's a whole other thing to like take that data and start using it to optimize your business. It's easy to set up the tracking and kind of like make sure that the data ties together. But then the way you level up as a firm is you start looking at that data and synthesize, like not only getting insight from it, but then you synthesize that information and start putting it into practice. Oh, so and so isn't good at closing leads. Great, we'll have them handle the initial call. They'll be the receptionist or something, right? So we'll put them in that seat, and then this person has a really good close rate. Let's make them the closer. Like that's just a very watered down, simple example. But like those types of moves, the only way that you can confidently make them is if you're tracking everything in your firm.
Absolutely. Reports are everything for me. I always say that every software has a report option for a reason.
Yep.
Like, it is what it is. Like we do 28 cycles because that's usually how social media in general calculates, right? There's no such thing as like a 30-day cycle. Everything's 28.
Yep.
Apparently it's a thing. So, we do 28 cycles and we analyze it and we see like one thing that I learned from my analytics, just as a personal, we were targeting the wrong age group. We thought they were a lot older and they ended up being a lot younger than we thought, by a good chunk of 10 years, which is a whole decade, which is, oh, wow, okay, that makes more sense. So, I realized that I naturally attracted Latinas because I'm Latina and I'm very loud and proud about it. And so apparently, Hispanics are a thing for me. And I'm like, okay, cool. My people like me. That's amazing. So, little things like that where you think you know who your ideal client is and you get this persona going. And I had this whole name and everything. I had to change it all up because we were running the reports and we were running the analytics and we realized, holy crap, we've been targeting the wrong people. You know, the whole different decade, it's a whole different generation, it's a whole different ball game. So we started doing episodes in Spanish. We started doing, you know, more bilingual things and, you know, just really understanding who's actually like it's so funny because I coach freelance paralegals like as a side gig because I just appreciate that art and I appreciate that heart and I want to like, you know, give them their full cup. So like I have 5 of them right now that I'm coaching as a like a group and they all have the same questions. They all have the same, you know, roadmap kind of thing. And I go and I tell them, you think you know who your client is. You think you know that your client is blah, 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 until you actually run the data and then you're like, negative. This is not who my client is. And then in my case, I have secondary client. So I didn't know that. I was like, oh, that's so cool. We have a secondary client. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's the person that drives you to your main client. So in my case, it would be the paralegal.
Yep.
So the paralegals that work at the law firms listen to the podcast, you know, purchase the books and everything, and then go back to their law firms and be like, bro, I found this amazing consultant. I think you should really look into it. And so that's our secondary client. So we hit, you know, we hit on that as well. And so understanding your client is how you can revolve your business, right? Which is what I'm learning, still learning. So I'm a very big newbie on this. And my marketing team, God bless them, they're so patient with me because I am literally, you know, it's funny because I always talk about lawyers opening up shop and not knowing how to run the business. But then I look at myself and it's like, well, I don't know marketing, right? Like, so I can run the business, but I don't know anything about marketing. So I hire people, right? And so like I gotta follow my example. Like if you don't know how to run the business, hire people. If you don't know marketing, hire people that actually know how to do this because at the end of the day, you think you're saving money, but you're really not because it's your time that you're wasting, right? Because you can be making money while just providing this compensation to somebody else and supporting another business. You know, essentially, I'm all about supporting small businesses. So kudos. Although I'm a Google fan. Sorry. I love Google. I will never be an Apple. Everybody on my podcast knows that. I can't do the Mac. I'm so sorry. I know it's easy. I know it's probably safer. I know all the things. It's just super expensive.
Yeah.
And it
I'm
doesn't
with
matter
you.
how much money I make, I will always be a cheapo at heart. Like it doesn't matter. I always tell my husband this. I'm like, we will be trillionaires one day, and I know that that's going to be the case where we're going to be flying and doing everything, and I will still look for the deals on the flights, look for the deals on the like. It doesn't matter how much is in my account because the way to stay rich is to spend less.
Yep. Live below your means.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, so a few takeaways because we definitely digress there. But a few takeaways from the episode if you have some like quick tips other than obviously you've been providing some throughout the episode, which thank you very much. But maybe something for like the staff, right? Because I'm all about helping the staff and helping the managers kind of work together and really kind of create a coherent system. So
Mhm.
anything that you can maybe offer to them, maybe a resource or something that maybe just off the top of your head, you can go ahead and let them know about.
I think the one thing that popped up in my mind that checks a lot of boxes is for legal staffs to be making a concerted effort to get more Google reviews for their
Hmm.
firms.
Love
And
that.
I do think it's an entire staff initiative because on one hand, it helps marketing a lot with getting more eyeballs on the firm if you have a really good um, star rating on Google and lots of great testimonials. But it's really the legal team that's the one that's going to produce that review, not only from the outstanding service that they provide, but it's once the case settles and once the client has kind of their situation has been resolved, the team really needs to work together to get that person on the phone and get them to agree to that review. And I know it kind of seems so simple and it's kind of like silly that I'm bringing it up, but it's something that I see so many firms continue to neglect. And there's so many ways to make it a priority in your law firm. It could be something as simple as like, having like a quarterly competition, who can get the most client reviews, right?
Like that.
it could be, oh, hey, whoever gets the most gets a free day off. Whoever gets the most gets $1,000. Something like that, just to gamify it and make it like a healthy internal competition so that people are making it a priority. Because the fact of the matter is, and you alluded to this, Etta, like people today make their purchase decisions through reviews and testimonials. And it's like we knew that kind of a decade ago, like on Amazon, if you were like to buy like a tablet or something on there, like how did you do that? You would read the reviews. It's the same thing now for service-based businesses, right? So that's one of the first things that people are going to look at when they're considering calling you. And if you have a blemish on that, if you have like a I'd say if you have anything below a 4.5, you're losing money, because
Yes.
there's going to be countless other alternative firms with a 4.9 star, 1,000 reviews types of thing, right? So that's like that's the baseline expectation of the audience out there today. So anyway, I know that was kind of like a rant on Google reviews, but I think it's important for every layer of the company to be cognizant of the benefit that a Google review can have on the firm. So whether you're a paralegal or a secretary or receptionist or a managing partner or a supporting attorney, like that needs to be something that the firm makes a priority and has a system in place to continuously prioritize it.
And I love that you said incentives for the staff, right?
Yes.
Because I immediately said incentives for the client, right? Like give them a Starbucks card or something to leave that review. But then I'm like, that's kind of like a bribe, right? Like,
There's
right?
policy, there's
Yeah.
policy against that if
Yeah, of
Google
course.
catches you doing that. So it really the incentive should go to the staff member that's making the call, making the request for the review. Um, and the best time to ask for it is when the case has been settled, like when they're getting their settlement check. If it's like a personal injury type of case, like if they're coming into the office and you're handing them a check, say, hey, before I hand you this, like, do you mind just sitting down over here and just writing me a quick 5 star review? Like, of course they're going to say yes. They're ecstatic. You're giving them, you're helping restore their life with the work that you've done. So I think it's, I think it's something that every firm should prioritize.
I love that. And even a QR code where they can scan it on their phone, it
Yep.
immediately takes them there and they can do it on their phone, whatever the case may be. Everything is about simplifying the process. That's another thing I'm learning with marketing is your call to action should just be a one click. Just one
Yep.
click and it takes you directly to where they want to go.
Yep.
And that should be with marketing in general, right?
Yep.
So where do you want them to go? Do you want the call or do you want them to go straight to your intake form and then have the call? Like, how are you trying to handle your leads, in what way are you trying to really obtain the ultimate goal, right? So I love that. I love the Google because like I said, I'm a Google girl. So I like that you focus on Google reviews. But amazing. Thank you so much, Bo. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and joining us on the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. This has been, well, even insightful for me actually, because I thought I was like, oh, I know all this, and no. So I even learned a few things or two today. So that's amazing. And I wrote a lot of notes. So but thank you. I appreciate that. And until justice is served, everyone, we'll be here. Bye bye.